I know what you're thinking. You're thinking this is going to be one of those wussy lists that only rattles off villains that obviously have a sympathetic angle. But that is boring. Everyone with a brain knows that Magneto is right. You don't need me to tell you that. So let's go darker. Let's make a case for some of the nastier villains you don't hear defended that much. The so-called pure evil types. Let's start with Emperor Palpatine. I hate even bringing him up because Star Wars is so dead to me at this point. But it was still a big part of my childhood, and it's time to speak the truth on this one. And I'm not recognizing anything from outside the OG trilogy. Fuck the prequels, fuck the Disney pap. I'm only treating New Hope, Empire, and Return as canon, because those are the films I actually respect. First point. The Empire is supposedly this ultra horrible thing, right? They control the entire galaxy and they're super draconian bastards, right? So how come the Rebel Alliance has such a recruitment problem? The Empire has enough motherfuckers to build a moon-sized battle station twice, fully staff it. They have stormtroopers to spare for mopping up backwater desert planets like Tatooine. Meanwhile, the rebellion's clinging to like 12 ships and a bunch of idealistic teenagers. If the Empire is really so hated, why isn't the whole galaxy rising up in open revolt? Because most people were fine with the Empire. Most people under the Empire probably lived quiet, stable lives. Were there atrocities? Sure. But those atrocities were concentrated, strategic, and largely out of sight of the average citizen. The space trains ran on time. The planets had order. Other than blowing up Alderaan, which I admit was pretty messed up, when did we ever really see the Empire do anything that evil? We never see them kicking in doors and dragging innocent families into the street. We don't see mass starvation. We don't see mandatory Sith worship. Hell, we don't even see basic taxation. For all we know, the Empire ran a relatively stable bureaucratic machine where most people could just go about their business, raise their kids, make a modest living, assuming they didn't join a terrorist cell. So is the Empire evil? Sure. But it's no more evil than America or China or Russia here in this world, is it? What do we ever see the Empire do that America hasn't done? Really ask yourself that. They bombed a civilian population to send a message? Hey, read a history book. They installed fear to maintain galactic order. Yeah, so is every major world power in history. They silenced dissent. Welcome to the NSA, buddy. They crushed insurgencies in remote and hostile regions with overwhelming force. Sounds a hell of a lot like most foreign policy. And look, I'm perfectly comfortable saying that America is evil. I'm the last guy to shy away from that. But at the end of the day, when someone like Timothy McVeigh or Osama bin Laden blows up a building to fight America, I'm not on their side. Because America might be evil as fuck, but hey, it's our evil. It's the evil we understand. The evil we live inside. The evil that keeps the lights on and the roads paved. Emperor Palpatine, at the end of the day, is right. He saw that people don't want freedom. Not really. They say they do. They chant about it. They make little speeches. But when it comes down to it, most people want structure and order. They want to know who's in charge and what the rules are, even if those rules are brutal. Chaos, for most people, is scarier than oppression, and Palpatine understood that better than anybody. So let's move on to the next villain. We spent enough time on Palpatine. Let's talk about Jason Voorhees from the Friday the 13th franchise. I know what you're thinking. He's just a big old lumbering monster without a conscience. He just wantonly slaughters everyone in his way. But that is not an accurate description. Let's really think about it for a second. Jason Voorhees is not some random psycho. He didn't just wake up one day and go on a rampage. Jason is a reaction. He is a consequence. The people who get hacked to bits at Camp Crystal Lake all earned it. And not by smoking and having sex and drinking beer. That's surface level moral panic shit. No, they earned it because they were careless and they were self-absorbed and they were willfully ignorant of the trauma that that place carried. Let's go back. Jason was a disabled child, abandoned by negligent camp staff and left to drown while the counselors were off fooling around. Jason's mom decides to go full slasher, starts picking off every counselor in uniform, and for her trouble, she gets decapitated. Problem solved, right? Well, wrong, because guess what? Through an implausible series of events, Jason had survived his drowning and somehow lived in the woods for years. And in all that time, he never killed anyone that we know of. But guess what? After all that time, while lurking nearby the camp one night, he sees his mother again for the first time in years. Imagine that. Imagine being a broken, forgotten kid who's been surviving alone in the wood for years, isolated and half feral. The world thinks you are dead. You watch the camp reopen again and again as if nothing ever happened. Then one night, you hear your mother's voice. You come running, heart pounding, desperate, scared. And you're there just in time to see her get beheaded. Not by a villain, not by some cartoon monster, by a random teenager holding a machete. From that point forward, Jason is not just a killer. He's a guardian of memory, a walking, unkillable warning that consequences don't disappear just because you put up a new sign and reopen for summer bookings. You keep ignoring the past, keep disrespecting sacred ground, keep pretending your little party isn't built on someone else's trauma, Jason will remind you to go fuck yourself by ramming a fire poker through your spine and pinning you to a wall. Like, think of the fucking hubris of the people in the Friday the 13th universe. The sheer arrogance. Camp Crystal Lake has a higher body count than most small wars. And yet every few years someone thinks, maybe this time it'll be fine. They rename it, they refurbish it, they build new cabins, install fresh docks, and just act like, it's going to be fine this time. And every time Jason's like, did you motherfuckers forget? Well, hey, let me give you a little reminder. Okay, let's go real dark for the last one. Let's talk about Jack Torrance from The Shining. Now, I know what you're thinking.
Are you out of your fucking mind?
How the hell can I possibly make this case? The dude goes nuts and tries to chop up his family. There's nothing right about that.
I'm just gonna bash your brains. I'm gonna bash them right the fuck in.
Well, let's think about it from a slightly different perspective. One of the big criticisms Stephen King has of this movie, based on his book, is that Jack Nicholson seems nuts from the start. But to me, that's the point. I see Jack Torrance as a guy who was never meant to be a family man. He was never meant to be domesticated. He wasn't built for casseroles and parent-teacher conferences and reading bedtime stories. The man is a walking bundle of bad wiring, trying to fit into some prefab life he was never designed to live. He was always a wolf, wearing a leash and pretending to be a dog. What did the man want? He wanted to write and to drink and to fuck. To live a life of the selfish, brilliant artist, a man's man, a freak, a bastard. He didn't want to be a provider. He didn't want to be a dad. But societal pressure and expectations, the expectations of mid-century America, cornered him into that role anyway. Because that's what you do. You get married, you have a kid, you get a job. You keep your head down, you pretend it's enough. You pretend you're grateful for the picket fence. You smile when you're told. You say thank you when life hands you a plate of shit.
Here's to 5 miserable months on the wagon and all the irreparable harm that it's caused me.
But then the Overlook Hotel said to him, hey, Jack, fuck that shit. That ain't you, my man. And the Overlook Hotel was right. The Overlook Hotel didn't drive him nuts. Life drove him nuts. The Overlook just liberated him enough to see it, to express it. Now, don't get me wrong, murdering your family's bad. Hopefully no one needs to be told that. But how did it get to that point, huh? What brought things there? It was the end result of a dude being shoved into a mold that he did not fit until finally he fucking snapped.
You got a big surprise coming to you.
We want to think of liberation as this beautiful and pleasant thing, and it can be, but it ain't always. And when you're in Jack's position, when you've built a fraudulent life based on the machinations of a system that never asked you what you wanted, in that case, liberation don't look like freedom. It looks like a man with a deranged grin chasing his family through a hedge maze with an axe. So while Jack's actions are obviously wrong, that doesn't mean there wasn't a dimension of rightness hidden within his motivation. At the end of the day, he was just trying to reconnect with his authentic self by discarding the shackle of a life imposed upon him by forces much larger and more powerful than himself. He acted out in a way that was cruel and symbolic rather than pragmatic, but we can still recognize the ore of truth at the heart of his madness. Jack Torrance was not trying to destroy his family. He was trying to destroy the role, the mask, the lie. And there you have it. 3 villains who were right. Now, don't take this video too serious. This is not a simpleton list, can be taken at face value. I'm trying to use these characters to make some points to you. I want to make points about the things that you accept as evil and the things you accept as good or neutral. Because it's odd to me that Americans look at Palpatine and the Empire and say, oh, look how evil they are, but they don't see themselves reflected there. George Lucas even admitted that he based the Empire on America during the Vietnam War.
The good guys are the rebels. They're using asymmetric warfare against a highly organized empire. I think we call those guys terrorists today.
When I did it, they were Viet Cong.
Exactly. So were you thinking of that at the time?
Yes.
It's odd to me how people can watch Jason Voorhees and not realize that he's not pure evil. He's pure fucking trauma. And it's odd to me that people watch The Shining and think the horror is that Jack went crazy, when it's so obvious to me that it was the world outside the Overlook, the one we live in, that made him crazy. The Overlook just gave him the ability to finally express it. I don't believe in the pure evil villain, because for that to exist, we would have to live in some sort of morally ordered universe where good and evil are not inventions of the human mind, but fixed properties of material or even metaphysical reality. But of course, we don't live in that universe. We live in a universe where the judgment of what's good and evil is entirely contingent upon the values and perspectives of the observer. What you value, your objectives, your sympathies, these are the things that determine what is heroism, what is villainy, what is good, what is evil. I could end this discussion with a death of the monoculture, how in the absence of a singular or near singular moral framework, the ideas about heroes and villains become incredibly muddled. Or if you don't want to use the word muddled, we could just use the word complex. Or we could even use my favorite word, chaotic. We could even extrapolate this to our politics if we want. See what the competing ideas of good and evil are at war for the heart of our nation, you know? The actions of the various factions seen through different lenses, influenced by a bunch of different perspectives. One man's terrorist is another man's freedom fighter. One woman's idea of despotism is another woman's idea of stability. And this is before we even get into the messiness of cognitive dissonance. Most people, even if they fancy themselves consistent, are actually a big old jumble of disparate and contradictory ideas. Orwell called it doublethink. F. Scott Fitzgerald put a little bit more of a positive spin on it, saying, the test of a first-rate intelligence is the ability to hold two opposed ideas in the mind at the same time and still retain the ability to function. So, I like to always, when I'm watching a film, try to sympathize with the villain. Find whatever perspective there is to see the villain as right, because that act, that mental exercise, shows me the power of perspective, the power of narrative. Because I think of it not just as a philosophical exercise, but an exercise in empathy. Now, I find my politics skew left, for example. And I often find the actions of the MAGA faction of the country to be evil. But I also try to see things from their perspective. And I think what we really see in that faction is that they're profoundly motivated by nostalgia. Some of what they're nostalgic for is genuine elements of the past, and some of it is entirely fictitious. But I don't want to make this a political video. I don't want to be remiss by not pointing out that intersection, you know? So how do I end this video before I digress even further from the premise? I suppose the easiest way is probably just to end it. So that is all.